Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I would love to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, or Kakwadash. Hey, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone that taught us this truth. Blessings and safety to the Lord's elect. I'm your fellow servant, Ma'ad Quadar from the GMS camp here in Cleveland. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying to the Lord's elect, man. And this is all through the spirit, man. I want to call it a testimony video. And, pretty much last camp, when we was out there on the highways and hedges plowing, you had this Jake that walked up, man. And his whole body was covered in what we perceived as, whatever the highest degree burn, man. His whole body, man, his whole, from head to, as he showed me, his legs and, all of that. So, one thing we noticed is that, Jake had small fringes around his jacket. He had small fringes where you could see, the border of blue. All right, but it was like, small. So if you just glanced at him, you wouldn't see it. And he came up and he said shalom. All right. Now instantly, I'm thinking he an angel, man. That's just me, man. I'm the brother, man. Hey, man, this brother probably an angel, man. But so he watching us. He's just looking. I said he saluted us, and he just stood on the other side. And he's just, he's standing there. So I walk up to him, probably after about 5 minutes of him standing there. I said, shalom. I'm like, how you doing, bro? He said, yeah, I'm all right. He like, yeah, I've been knowing I was an Israelite for a while, a long time, and and he was getting teary-eyed. So I asked him, I said, what's wrong, bro? And he was like, I'm tired. And he was telling me that the reason why his body looked like that was because he was at the stage 4 cancer. All right. Now, which, we have, we understand, cancer, due to, the beautiful lesson that the apostles did years ago, man. Going into the protein wall and, the cyanide and the apricot seeds. I'm not going to dive into that because we know how these devils are. And I began to tell them certain things that, the apostles, had mentioned, about dealing with, cancer, man. And, so, just to make a long story short, man, he was telling me that he was tired, man. And, he took the chemo, and the chemo, it fucked him up, man. It made things worse. And now his immune system was attacking his body. I believe that's what he said, man. And it caused his body to look like, he was basically, caught in the house fire, man. Or, but hey, man, the point was, he was crying, man. And I believe he left because he didn't want to cry in front of me. But he was like, I'm tired, man. He like, I'm tired, man. He said, I just lost this job that I was going to get, due to them only, they wanted to take a hair sample for a drug test. And as you can see, due to the, the cancer, man, I don't have no hair, And he was just like, I'm tired, man. I'm ready to, pretty much, go upstairs with the Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah, man. In so many words, man. All right. And it touched me, man, I can't say it didn't, man. It touched me. And, I dropped a tear myself, man. And so, I thought about, I was going to do the video, speaking about it, but I never got around to it. And then, one of my managers I work with, you know, her father, she found her father, you know, unresponsive. You know, he had heart failure while he was asleep. And this just happened the other day, you know, and, you know, he was real sick, man. You know, he was real sick. And, you know, I comforted her, man. You know, I told her, you know, I brought out a scripture that I'm going to bring out in a few minutes to her. And, you know, I don't really too much, you know, speak about, you know, my spirituality at work. But, you know, the Spirit had me say a couple comforting words to her. And let me just open up with this real quick. This is Sirach 22:11. It says, weep for the dead, for he had lost the light, and weep for a fool, for he wanteth understanding. Make little weeping for the dead, for he is at rest, but the life of a fool is worse than death, man. So it says, the point that I'm grabbing in this scripture, man, is, you know, weep little for the dead, for he has, you know, rest, you know, for he's at rest. You know, so pretty much, man, you know, when, you know, a person passes on, man, they're at rest. You know, they don't have to worry about being sick, okay? They don't have to worry about the pain. Hey, listen, man, when your loved ones are in the hospital, you know, they may be of age, you know, they may, you know, be sick, have a serious plague. You know, 9 times out of 10, they're suffering, man. Okay? And due to Esau's greed, you know, he'll fucking, you know, put tubes all down their throat. All right? He'll put tubes all down their throat and hook them up to all these different machines, man. All right? And when you go see them or, you know, visit them, man, you're happy because they're alive, man. But in reality, man, they're suffering. You know, Esau keep them in that state because, you know, he wants to get money. You know, every day a person is hooked up to these machines and they're taking up space in the hospital room, man. It puts, you know, a bankroll in Esau's pocket, which when the apostles went into the word hospital, it goes back to the word hospitable. All right. And I'm just quoting the apostle to heart, man. You know, when someone comes to your house and, you know, to visit, man, and you give them a cup of water and a sandwich, man, you don't before they exit your house, man, you don't give them a bill in their hand, man. It's nothing hospitable about that. Like I said, I'm just quoting the apostle to her, man. But, you know, so when you die, man, you in the spiritual world with the Lord, man, and you're at rest, man. Especially Jake, man. Now, I perceived them to be Edomites, you know, and, you know, they were pretty reasonable. You know, they were still devils. You know, I perceived him to be an Edomite, you know. Like I said, he was kind of reasonable, kind of cool, you know. Doesn't mean he don't hate me or dislike me inwardly, you know. But, you know, some of these Edomites, they soft as hell. They're in the wrong spirit, you know. Just like Jake. You got some Jakes that's soft as hell, man. They ain't in the right spirit. But you got some of these Edomites that are in the right spirit, you know. But I ain't trying to digress. But, so, when you Jake, man, you don't got to worry about the curses no more. You a man, you don't got to worry about your woman committing adultery, your children misbehaving. You know, you don't have to worry about breathing in chemtrails, eating GMOs. Hey, I remember Apostle Tahar, man, he said, you know, if you could ask Michael Jackson, do he want to come back and get all his billions of dollars back? Matter of fact, fuck billions. Do he want to come back and get trillions of dollars and, you know, get his mansion back and just get his life back? He'll say, fuck no. He'll rather stay up in the spirit world, man. Okay? So, you know, I'm going to get another precept. All right, this is chapter 30, verse 17. All right, Sirach 30 and 17, it says, death is better than a bitter life. And our life is damn bitter here, man. All right? And now, you know, like I said, for Jake, man, we've been under these damn curses. The Lord said, look, man, curse will now come as in and curse will now go as out, man. We are under the curses, man. You know, I don't give a damn if you get $1 million right now, man. All right, your life is going to be bitter, man. And these heathens are starting to experience that bitter life as well, man. Which is no coincidence that the word America means bitter, okay? So now these curses are falling upon the heathen. Now you're hearing sighing and crying from these damn heathens, man. Which Jake been sighing and crying, man. The improper way, okay? But hey, look, man, we're sighing and crying the correct way, man, you know? We ain't in the streets, no justice, no peace. All right, but the point is, man, death is better than a bitter life, man. So a person that dies, man, you know, they're better off than a person that's still here. You know, even the Apostle Paul said, man, you know, I'd rather be absent from the body to be present with the Lord. But, you know, he also understood that it was more needful for him to be here, man, to you know, to do the work, man. You know, if it wasn't for this work, man, what would be the purpose? As you understand what's going on, okay? You understand, you understand death. You know, people fear what they don't know. You know, I said that, you know, we touched on this topic, you know, weeks ago, man, but, you know, like I said, it just hit my spirit to speak on it. You know, even I, you know, witnessed, you know, my father, you know, passed away. You know, I just, not too long ago, experienced my uncle being in the hospital, man. You know, they told the doctor, look, man, take all that shit off of him and let him fade away naturally, man. And you can see his body just ease up, man. And you could just see him going to his comfort zone, man. Even though he wasn't, you know, speaking or opening up his eyes, but you could just see his body at ease, man, after they took all them fucking generators and fucking tubes out of his mouth, man. You know? But it says death is better than a bitter life or continual sickness, man. Continual sickness, every time you turn around, man, you're sick. And when I'm talking about sick, I ain't talking about a damn cold, man. I'm talking about, you know, sick with medical conditions, man. All right, and we know where these medical conditions come from. Okay? So it says death is better than a bitter life or continual sickness, man. So at this point, man, you rather die, man, than have to deal with being sick all the damn time, man. You in and out of the hospital, you having heart transplants, or you having strokes and, you know, heart attacks and all this madness, man. And and our body is already weak, man. So as you going in the hospital with these different conditions, your body get weaker and weaker and weaker, man. All right, and you being on the opposite side of it, as that being your loved one, you got to understand. Like I said, man, you know, some people be selfish. You know, I never forget this. When I went to visit my uncle, you had this Edomite lady, what I perceive her to be an Edomite, man. She got a damn tube down her throat. And you could just tell the shit was just so uncomfortable. And her family just around smiling and, you know, she's suffering. You know? But yeah, man, it was just on my spirit to just, you know, talk about this because, like I said, man, my manager, you know, father passed away. Like, I knew him. You know, he came up to our job daily, man, and chopped it up with me, man, and, you know, and it just happened all of a sudden, man. Another thing, it been on my spirit so heavy, man, because I know that it was due to, you know, his diet, man. You know, I know it was due to his diet. And it was just, you know, heavy on my spirit, man, you know, to get certain things right, man. Because our elders and apostles, man, been speaking about this for a long time now, man. You know, getting out there, like right now, I'm on a walk, man. You know, and I'm off and on with it. But, you know, man, while we here, man, we got to do the best we can, you know. Incorporating a decent diet and, you know, working out, man. And I'm speaking to myself for sure, man. First and foremost. All right. But hey, man, Lord willing, this was edifying. I'm going to end giving all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors again to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone and Will. Blessings and safety to the Lord's elect. Hey, keep up hope. We almost home. Shalom.